I hated it.
Oh my God, me too.
Oh my God, because seriously, you know that commercial that says if you haven't ordered in 6
4
hours?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it would not, It was horrible.
It's time to talk about sex, but an honest talk about how our sex lives are changing as we age. Welcome to No Two Gays About It, the show for the over 50 gay male, hosted by two well over 50 gay men, and all about the things that are important to those gay men who are over 50. Hello, I'm Tom Burke.
And I'm Michael Foley.
And today we are going to talk about sex, the ups and the downs, literally. As we gay men age. We'll be discussing how aging affects our sex lives, including health issues, medication, stress, and even the loss of a sex drive. We'll also discuss how we can deal with those changes, including the wonder drug Viagra. And finally, we'll take a look at how we can find and bring intimacy into our lives when sex is not always on the table. So join us for this conversation as we take an honest and realistic look at what happens to our sex lives when we get older.
Hey, before we get started, you guys click like and subscribe and ring that little bell as well if you want notifications on when a new video drops.
Let's talk about sex. Sex for the aging gay guy. 50-year-old, 60-year-old, 70-year-old, 80-year-olds. Michael, how the heck is aging affecting our sex lives?
It's ebbs and flows. With me, sometimes my sex drive is incredibly high, and other times I honestly could care less. I am happy sitting on the couch eating a pizza. So, you take it when you could get it, right?
It's definitely happening to all of us. Yes, we can still be like, oh, I want to go for it. And other times, as you said, it's like, no, I'd rather just hang out and do nothing. But more than that, though, a lot of things that are happening to our bodies, ourselves, as we're aging, really does affect our sex lives. One big thing is health problems. A lot of guys our age and older are having some health issues, which kind of deal with the whole sex act,
Absolutely.
Especially a lot of guys who are having heart issues. A lot of those heart medications kind of shut down a lot of our body parts.
Right.
And, maybe it's not forever. Maybe it's just a temporary thing. But health issues do affect. And we have to kind of just go with the flow. And, it's more important that we're dealing with our health than it is with our sexuality at that moment. But as I said, medications are a huge thing that affect not only the sex act, but our libido as well. I know a lot of guys who take happy pills, those psych drugs to make us not hate life so much.
I know the antidepressants absolutely do curb your sex drive.
Yeah, which, can be a big issue. I have a really good friend who is married, has been in this committed relationship for a long time, and his husband, double whammy, is on some heart medication and on one of those psych drugs. And his husband is just like, yeah, I just don't care. I don't want to do this anymore. And so my friend's like, but I do.
Yeah, that's a tough situation.
We were out to dinner with another couple, and one of them just got out of the hospital, had some major health issues. And because I knew we were going to be talking about this, I did ask them. I was like, how did it affect, whatever? And it was so sweet. This one man said, there are times that I just have to step forward and be like, his health, his life is so much more important than getting off. And I was like, you're right.
And you know what the biggest sex organ is, right?
Yes,
I know that's a loaded question. It's your brain,
right?
So even if you can't function below the waist, there are things that people can do to
Sure.
stimulate that portion of the brain and to encourage those endorphins to sort of rush through you without necessarily having an orgasm.
Right.
And I think that's hugely important, especially for, people like you who are in a long-term committed relationship. I would imagine you have ebbs and flows to your sex life and you've been together 35 years. So how do you guys navigate those waters when it's ebbing and flowing? And you guys may be in different spots at different times.
Well, that's definitely it. As you know, my husband has had some health issues, which has affected our, okay, we're not going to be jumping around like crazy young people for a while. I've had to deal with that. But not only those major health issues, but I'm talking also as we're aging, we might in our heads think that we are still, those hot 28-year-olds, but our bodies are telling us a completely different story, and even there are times, okay, I'm getting really personal here, but like I said, I want to have this honest and realistic talk. I mean, there are times when we're doing it, going at it, and I'm all of a sudden like, it's not really going to happen tonight, is it? There are those nights when I'm not going to get over that finish line. But my husband understands that because there are nights that he can't get over that finish line, and I'm like, okay. And so we help the other person finish the race and then we go and eat pizza on the couch, so
it's a win-win.
It is it's a win.
Hey, anytime there's pizza, I don't care what side you sit on, it's a win. But it's and kudos to you because again, your biggest sex organ is your brain. Everything below the waist is sort of every function that happens down there comes from what's going on between your ears. And the fact that you guys can sit back and go, hey, can we do this tomorrow? Can we finish later? Whatever. It's not important that you care more about each other in the situation and take care of your emotional well-being as well as your physical.
But yeah, I mean, just kind of accepting the fact that we're aging and this is going to happen every once in a while. So, okay, and as you're saying, that brain of ours, dictates what's happening in our bodies as we're aging, besides taking medications, besides having health issues, besides just being old guys. There's a lot of stress in life, and that affects, our sex lives. I'm sure that happens with you too, when you're like just dealing with life and you have some issues and problems. And when we were 20, yeah, we had issues and problems, stress. Who knew about stress? And you just the night away anyway. But when you get to this age and you're like so stressed out, parts of your body are like, yeah, come back to me later because I got to deal with something else right now. So there are just so many things that affect our sex lives as we are aging, but I think we just have to be like upfront about it.
Totally. It's interesting because I broke my back when I was 17 and I had 3 knee surgeries by the time I was 24. So chronic pain has been a part of my life for a very long time. And obviously, as I'm getting older, it's getting a little less tolerable in specific moments. And, I'm capable of letting somebody know, because I do think it's important to communicate that my body is in a lot of pain right now, and I'm not in a place where having the physical act of sex is going to work for me. And, I think that honesty creates a different level when you're with somebody. It has for me, I know. That, usually they are happy over the fact that I was able to share that with them. And that opens a door for more conversation. And I think being honest about where we are physically is hugely important as we grow older. Because I am the Tin Man in the morning these days where it's like, oil can. Please, somebody. There are
Right.
mornings I get up out of bed and seriously have to go and sit on the couch for 5 minutes because my legs aren't there. It's just it's a struggle some
Right.
days, and I think we have to embrace that as we get older as well. Just going, this is what it is. It is where it is now, and in an hour from now, once I start moving and get the oil can, I'll be a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that we just have to be just, I don't know, understanding with our bodies too, and not get all pissed off about it.
Right.
One more thing I just want to talk about with how aging changes our sex lives, and then because I love what you were talking about, the importance of communicating. But let's get into that in a bit. One thing that I did, because I was reading up. Of course, I love research. I love reading stuff, and I was looking up about gay men and aging and sex, and there was a number of articles I found about so many men, and I'm sure you know men like this. So many men define themselves through the sex act, gay men, that they are the sex act first. That's how this one article I read was saying that. But that puts so much pressure on those men as they're aging and they start having these issues because it's like that their identity is being pulled away from them.
Yeah, and what happens is there's this domino effect because all of a sudden your mental state is being affected now.
Right.
And I do know a lot of people who identify sexually. That's how they put themselves out. That's their sexuality is tied to their masculinity. And you're right. As we get older, we need to come to terms with that and allow that to be okay on days where it's just not happening. It's a cycle. And then there will be, months and weeks where it's like you're a horny 17-year-old again. So you have to be willing to take the ride as we get older and be comfortable wherever you're sitting, whether it's a day where it's like nothing's working or it's one of those glorious days where it's like you can't get enough, just to be happy.
And if you are truly one of those guys who identifies themselves as this sex act through this gay sex, they have to be really cognizant of this and start separating that them from the act, that they are so much more than that, because as you're saying, you might have a couple good weeks and then all of a sudden, whoa, what just happened?
And again, for that to be okay is something we really, really, really have to give ourselves the compassion and grace that we deserve when we're just not feeling it.
The next section we want to tackle is how can we deal with these issues that are happening with us, these changes, whether it be medication or stress or health issue or just life. How can we deal with that? And as I said earlier, I loved the thing that you said about communicating is so incredibly important. Letting our partners know that, I can't do that double backflip that I used to do because I'll be in traction for the next 3.5 years. So, whatever it is, like just communicate what it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I have a little bit of a leg up in regard to this because I've been... Shut up. Do you know that seriously? Wow. I don't usually open the door that way. But anyway, considering I've been dealing with this for so long in regard to the chronic pain, that I honestly used to experience an embarrassment and a shame in regard to not being in a place where I could have sex because of the pain. Yeah. And it took me a very long time to get to a place to be able to say to somebody, I can't right now because the pain is it's too intense, especially when, it was my L4, L5, S1, S2 for anybody out there who has back problems. It's your lower back. So there's a lot of movement that's, impeded when you're having a really bad day. And again, it's such a weird thing as men that we experience so much through our sexuality.
Yeah.
And just to find myself, it probably wasn't until my 30s where I was able to say, I'm not there today, and it has to be okay. And if it's not, then, we probably have nothing to pursue because this is just part of who I am. It's inherently who I am.
Right. Okay. So this also opened a door to something that I want to ask you about. As I mentioned, sometimes when my husband and I are, getting together and doing this, and I realize, or he realizes, like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. We're not going to finish this just because, whatever, the body's telling us no. Because we're in this committed relationship, we're very understanding about each other, and we're like, okay, cool. Do you want to do it later? Do you want to do it tomorrow? Can I finish? Whatever. But as we did a whole show on hookups, which you taught me a whole bunch of things about the world out there and hooking up with somebody. But what if you're hooking up with guys our own age, and you or one of them has one of those issues? Like, are you mortified, or do you guys all understand?
There are some people that do get embarrassed. And again, maybe because I've been dealing with it for so long, to me, it's not a big deal if someone can't function in a particular moment. That I'm like, that's okay. We cuddle. Awesome. I love making out. I could kiss for hours. That it doesn't necessarily have to go any further. There doesn't have to be a climax in order for me to feel sexually gratified.
Right.
And again, I guess maybe I was lucky because, for 40 some odd years, I've been dealing with this particular issue. And it's interesting as I've gotten older to now hear people have a conversation with me about it. And I think that's a key, is to continue to communicate. If you're not in a place, don't get frustrated. Don't be embarrassed. Just know that it's in that moment, for whatever reason, you're not able to function. But there's a ton of other things you could do to create intimacy in the moment.
Right. Awesome. Cool. Have you ever experienced like some guy who's like, you know what, I'm on hard medication and I just can't get it up today, or I'm not going to finish, or, I would hope that people out there are able to be upfront about everything.
Sometimes I have to prod and push a little bit because I could tell that they're getting frustrated. I could tell that they might be a little embarrassed. And I'm like, it's not a big deal.
Right.
It's not. Life is not going to end on a particular day because you can't get it up or you're not able to function to the level that you would want to. It's not. Right. Life is not going to end. And we have to, as we get older, I think, untie that knot that our identity is based on sex.
And the thing is that it's happening to everybody, whether they admit it or not. Everybody's going to have one of those days. Everyone's going to have one of those nights or whatever. So I would hope that everybody is so understanding, and just be like, hey, like you, all right, that's okay, but let's do something else or whatever. And as you're saying, communicating is like a really important part of aging and sexuality, that you're like, yes to this, no to this. I might need some help here, or you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think it's important for us single guys to remember, if it's us in the situation and we're not able to function in a way we want to, is to give somebody else the opportunity and a moment to be compassionate toward us and say to us, I get it. I totally understand it because it happens to me. And I think that's the major wall that needs to be broken down. First and foremost is the ability to allow yourself to have the conversation.
Right. I think, obviously it starts having that conversation with yourself and just being like, you know what? I'm not the only one that this happens to. I have to just be like, yeah, this is going to happen and I'm okay with this, so that you're able to talk to the next person about that as well. It's a lot easier for me in my world because we get each other, we understand, we have the leeway, but I think I would be one of those people that might feel a little mortified, like, oh, I can't be perfect today. which is unfortunate.
Yeah, because I think for a lot of us, gay men especially, that it undermines our masculinity in a way if we're not able to function. And
Yeah.
nothing could be further from the truth.
Right.
That it just because you're not able to function on a given day doesn't chip away at your masculinity or your sense of self. It shouldn't
Right.
anyway. It does with a lot of people, but as we get older, hopefully we learn other ways of operating in the world that doesn't have to do with the stuff that's below our waist.
Hopefully. I mean, yeah, we all still like sexuality is an important thing until we're dead. Like it is an important part of who we are. The sex act is an important part of who we are, but it's not all of who we are. That's what we have to kind of separate from. Okay, I have a question too, though, about, I mentioned earlier, the wonder drug Viagra. I am sure that has completely changed things out there as well. But, as I said, about myself and my husband, like some nights I just can't get to the finish line. I can get it up, but I just can't finish there. So Viagra is not going to help you there. But
No.
Have you had any experience with any of these drugs?
It was probably in the early 2000s, I think, when the drug first came out.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine had it, and he was doing it recreationally. Not because he needed it, because he was in his 30s.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell, I'll try it.
Yeah.
I hated it.
Oh my God, me too.
Oh my God, because seriously, that commercial that says if you have an erection lasting more than 6
4
hours?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it would not,
Yeah.
it was horrible. And I got a headache, my face
Yes.
was flushed.
Yeah,
and I'm
exactly.
like, oh, hell no, I don't need help. At that point, I was
Right.
like, I don't need help anyway, so I don't ever need to do that again. And fortunately, I don't still. I mean, at some
Yeah.
point, I might have to reconsider it, but I did not like what went on in my body when I took it.
That's so funny because I had the exact same thing. And I too, like the moment it came out, Scott, my husband, was able to get us some. And I was like, I want to try this, And I too was like still in my 30s.
Yep.
I didn't need it at all. But I took it. It was so painful.
Yes.
Like so painful. It was like so, I don't know, tight.
Engorged.
Oh my God. And then, like you said, the headache and just a little TMI, I'm very blessed down there. So there was a lot of my blood was somewhere so I was like dizzy and I was feeling sick and I pacing back and forth. When is that 4 hours up or whenever it was? Like I just wanted it to be over, but it stuck in my body for a long time. Days, it'd be like all of a sudden, ba-boing. Oh, it's still in my system. Okay.
Yeah.
But I just remember the pain, being so dizzy, and the headaches. Hopefully it has changed. Hopefully because that was also the very
that was when it
beginning.
was like really pure and really strong.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that they've toned it down a little bit. I would hope anyway, because that was intense.
It
And I
was.
remember where I was. I was in Kennebunkport, Maine.
Well, there you go.
And it was like 4:00 in the morning, and I'm still like, what the fuck?
I know, right? Oh my God. So crazy.
Oh my God.
But it is a wonder drug. It is great for those men who do have issues, so that they can, continue having sex. So it's a great thing. And there are so many different types of that right now. There's Cialis and God only knows what else.
Yeah.
But so I do hope that it has changed a bit. But the thing is, like you said, when I get to that point and I need it, I'm going to use it. Why not? If it does help us, although I hope it doesn't hurt as much as it did.
They had to have changed that formula because,
I
again,
hope so.
this was when it first came out, and it was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
do you remember there was a anti-inflammatory, was it Celebrex? Yeah, that they actually took off the market because it was too strong and people were having heart issues, because that's what they put me on in the late 90s. Unfortunately, it didn't affect my heart, but it was a miracle drug. And they took it off the market and revamped it and toned it down. So I'm assuming they probably figured out a more reasonable
Yeah,
balance with
I
the
hope so.
erectile dysfunction drugs.
Right.
Hey, if you guys out there want to let us know, please do, because we're
Yeah.
curious.
But again, it's so great that it's out there and that people can have access
Yeah.
to it, and just great. But it doesn't help with the sex drive, and I know that that's something that wanes as one ages. It's, as you said, one week you're going crazy, the next week you're like, I could care less. You don't know of any drug that kind of gets the libido going, do you?
No, again, because I think a lot of that is between the ears.
Yeah.
Because I know I've gone through periods in my life where I was in a state of depression and
Right.
there was no way anything was going to work. And it was because of what was going on between my ears.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was a welcomed escape for me, but then there were other times where it was like, I just can't even think about it.
Yeah.
So again, your biggest sex organ is your brain. We have to remember that. So
Yeah.
a lot of what, and that may be a part of a lot of people's issue is that, because I know it was for me. If I'm not able to function, I got to sort of look at what's going on in my head at that particular moment. And I think allowing myself that space to be in a shitty place and not being sexual is okay now.
Yeah. I know that I can, if I'm like so horned up and I'm like, okay, and I see my husband's face, I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's not happening.
We're not going anywhere, are we? Which I guess, for the straight guy, you do it whenever you want, whenever you feel it. But if you're in this committed relationship, it's not all about you. So it's like, I really, really wanted to play today. And like,
but so I get you see that, right? You see it happening. Do you guys have a way of sort of accommodating the other person in those moments? Or is it just, we'll do it tomorrow?
Well, no, I mean, it really depends on, like, if I look at him and I see he is so stressed out about work or there's some big issue, I'm like, yeah, it's not even worth doing that. But like I was saying, if we are in the process of it and he's like, you know what, not going to happen today, he definitely will be there for me too. He's like, okay, but you can be like, no. And I'm always like, no, it's okay. I'll wait. Yes, do me. Like I want, no, it's.
So how is your headspace when you're in the place? Do you get down on yourself if you're in the place where it's not happening, but he really wants to go there? Do you get down on yourself? Are you harder on yourself? Or do you find it easier not to be because you're in a committed relationship and you know each other so well?
It's that. And, we've talked a lot about being in this committed relationship. We all, when to step forward, when to step back, when it's about you, when it's not about you. And we kind of are there for each other. And it's like, if it's not working for me, let's make it work for you if, we're into it or whatever. And then there are times that we're like, you know what, it's okay. We'll wait till we're both going for this or whatever. So for me, this whole being in a committed relationship thing works and the whole sexual thing works, but it's not always about me. So,
and I'm sure it's a dance that you had to learn with
totally.
both of you.
But that's a really great thing you brought up. We got together. I was in my 20s. He was 30 something. We grew up together. We started out being those crazy maniacs doing it, 3 times a day, every day and I think back on that, I'm like, no wonder I was so thin. But, we aged together. Right. So, the aging process and the slowing down of the libido or the slowing down of whatever, or life taking over, we became more successful in our lives and had more things to worry about. So that's great. But I think if you come together later in life, you haven't had that growth together. So you have to do the dance. You have to learn the dance where we created our own dance, if that makes any sense,
Yeah, you guys got to learn the dance together in your time, as opposed to, folks like me who are older and we're just getting together with somebody. We have to learn that dance now with bad knees.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it makes maneuvering around the floor a little more challenging.
But if we go back to the most important thing we talked about, this communication thing, it's like, yeah, I got bad knees. Ah, good, because I got a bad elbow and a bad back.
Right.
Like, okay. So you still get that really great excitement, but in a realistic way of being the older guy. I think that's smart and important to communicate, right?
Yeah, and allowing
Yeah.
ourselves as single gay men who sometimes struggle physically to live in our own head, a state of grace, and for that to be okay and not to be so
Right.
hard on ourselves.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
But then also allows us to give grace to others,
Absolutely.
to understand that, yeah, you might have a lot of shit going on in your life. You might have some issues. You might be on medications. You might, whatever. I'm giving you grace. If you give me grace, let's go. Awesome. For some people, sex really is off the table or is off the table often, And so I think it's important to figure out how can we, as we're aging, as our sex lives are getting slower and less often or whatever, how can we find or bring that intimacy into our lives? Because that is an incredibly important thing. And something you said to me, again, back to our show on hookups, you were saying that a lot of the reasons why guys are out there hooking up is to have those moments of intimacy, to have that kind of feeling between two people. So if you take the sex act out of that, how can we bring in that intimacy into our lives?
Ooh, that's a big one.
I know, right?
I think it starts with us and allowing for our inability to be physically sexual, for it to be okay, and not to experience a sense of shame or embarrassment or feeling less than because this particular aspect of your life isn't operating the way you would want it to.
Right.
And then hopefully, if you're starting to date somebody, because this happened to me very recently out here, where someone had prostate surgery and they weren't able to function.
Yeah.
And he had the conversation with me. And I can't tell you how good that made me feel that he was willing to share that with me. And in that moment, it didn't matter.
Sure.
We sat on the couch on our first date and just like snuggled, watched TV, held hands, made out, and sex wasn't on the table. And then after a couple more dates, we found other ways to do things. And
fantastic.
I felt incredibly honored that he shared that with me so early, because a lot of people wouldn't. Because again, there's an embarrassment for some strange reason that comes along with things like that. And so I urge you guys out there to be willing to share, because there are people out there who will accept that and be okay with it if you're yourself and you live in yourself and you're a great person. That I think you'll find somebody who will more than likely be willing to take the journey with you.
But yeah, which is brilliant and lovely. But all guys out there should be accepting and open to this, because we're all going to hit some of these blocks along the way, So we should, as you said, give grace and receive grace back. We have another couple friend. One of the guys had open heart surgery, and he too. I asked questions about their sex life because we're doing this show, and he said something that was lovely, lovely to me. He said, I just liked lying with my head on his chest, listening to his heart beating. That was so much more than the hottest sex thing that I could have done when I was 20. That was such an intimate moment, and knowing that he made it through this heart surgery and his heart was still beating, and for his partner to just feel that intimacy by having his ear on his chest. I thought that was such a lovely thing,
Yeah.
you know? So I think we all have to kind of change the way we're thinking about sexuality, change the
Yeah.
way we're thinking about the sex act.
You just hit on a huge issue, and that is for us to learn how to bring intimacy back into our sex life, even if it's a one-night stand.
Yeah.
To bring that intimacy back into it, because it has a huge impact on how we perform, how we feel about ourselves, and that's
Right.
that's a beautiful thing. That's still one of my favorite things to do, honestly, is to lay with somebody with my head on their chest to hear their heart beating.
Yeah.
That's been a thing of mine, I guess, God, since I was a teenager, for some strange reason. Because there's a closeness that you have
Right.
that transcends anything else. As corny
Sure.
and as queer as that sounds, to me, that's a huge part of my sexuality.
Okay. So when you are with somebody, do you say that? Like, I would love to just lay with my head on your chest.
I just do it.
Okay.
I do. I just,
Okay.
if we're done, and I love putting my head on somebody's chest. And there are times I'll say, "Oh my God, I love that sound," and they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right. Which is great. And again, though, the importance of communicating, be like, you know what? No, it's not going to happen tonight, but I just would love to lay here with my
Yeah.
head on your chest. Like, that is so romantic and sweet and, so much better than that, like, wham, bam, I came and I left, You're missing out on all that beautiful stuff, which is cool. What's another way that you can kind of bring in intimacy into your life if sex is not so much on the table?
PDAs. I'm huge on PDAs. Public
Oh,
displays of
Michael,
affection.
I am so not.
I know, but I am. Just like sort of, being in a restaurant, holding hands across the table. That, to me, is as much part of my sexual being as anything else I do. If actually, for me, it's probably a bit more, because I feel so much more connected to the person.
Yeah.
To be able to hold their hands, or cuddling in a movie theater, that it's not about the actual act of sex, but we're being sexual in this very different way. And so I think it's just learning to discover other ways to express affection, or express that you are really hot for this person and just want to be close to them. Oh my God, I love that feeling so much. Cool. And I'm going to keep pushing you. I want to see you boys walking, holding hands, and I want to see PDAs. I'm throwing the gauntlet down for you.
It's just not my thing.
I get it, but
whatever. So I do want to ask you something. We have some of the most amazing guys who are watching and listening to our shows, and they write into us all the time. And there are a number of guys who have written in who have said that they've just given up.
Yeah.
That they're just done with it. They're done with dating. They're done with trying to find relationships. They're done with sex. They're just closing up shop.
Yeah.
That is a little sad to me. And I understand there's so many reasons why they are. But if it's any of these things that we've talked about, like, I'm not going to go out and date because I'm on meds and I don't feel like it, or I have a health issue and I can't whatever, I think it comes down to that thing that you say is so important. It's that communicating,
Yeah. I respect their decision, because it is theirs.
Sure.
But I would hope that at some point, some folks might rethink it, and hopefully open up to more conversations with other people about what they're experiencing, because it might make you feel less alone, which sometimes is why we isolate and just throw our hands up and say, I'm done. Because it is such a huge part of who we are and our experience while we're here.
And we need that, especially if we are going through something difficult, whether it be a health issue or stress, something in our lives, to have that moment where, like you were saying, to just sit on the couch with somebody and hold their hand and watch a movie and say, like, God, I'm having such a hard time, and be there for them. That's an important thing for everybody. And I hope people are hearing you say how important these things are to you and how important it is to give grace to other people.
And ourselves.
I think if I was a single guy and I was having some sort of sex, issue that I couldn't get it up, couldn't finish, had an issue, whatever it was, I would feel horrible and I would not put myself out there because I don't want to be judged by other people.
Right.
But to hear you saying, yeah, we're all going through this. We all have those days and it's okay. And I just hope that all the guys out there are like, yeah, we're all going through this. Like, we have all had those days and we all can just support each other and just be so understanding. I hope that's happening out there. And I hope that they hear that in your stories, because you are one of the guys that's out there.
I think we just have to be willing to open up and share and be vulnerable. And if someone doesn't want to hear it, that shouldn't be a reflection on us. It's just that's somebody who isn't in a place to receive it. That shouldn't, nobody, I think, in the course of a lifetime has thrown their hands up as much as me and just went, fuck this, I'm done. I don't want to deal with guys anymore. This sucks. It just is what it is. But then after I sit in my little mud puddle for a while and feel sorry for myself, I eventually get up, take a shower and go, no, having intimacy and contact with another human being is more important to me. That I don't ever want to shut that off in myself. And it's a hard feeling to resist. I get it. I get it so hard. It's not even funny. But, then I realize I'm the one who's losing out when I do that.
Well, good. Thanks for sharing that. Hope those guys hear you. And I think that's a great place for us to end our kind of realistic and honest discussion on sex. Communicate, be
Please,
open,
just,
give grace to others, give yourself grace, be okay if you're having issues.
Get rid of the shame, get rid of the embarrassment, talk to other people.
You're not the only one.
Yep.
We're all in the same boat. So
many people are going through the same thing. It's so true.
And, we might not be going through it today, but we might be tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And we might be in 5 years from now, and we can learn from you how to get through this.
We love making this show, and we would not be where we are without your support. Consider becoming a member of our Patreon today. For as little as the cost of 1 cup of coffee a month, your membership fees go directly to keeping the show on air, as well as earning you exclusive access to bonus content and early access to episodes. And that's just our way of saying thank you. Head on over to patreon.com/no2gays about it and join our found family now.
Yes, please click the link in the episode description below and become a Patreon member today. So, Michael, this has been fantastic. Thank you for sharing your stories and opening up. And again, I think the most important things that we can say about our sex lives and aging and how no matter what, there are going to be changes. Just to, first of all, give ourselves grace and be like, yeah, this is happening and it's okay. And if it's happening to someone we're with, to give them grace. And then to communicate to each other and be like, okay, maybe we can't do what we would love to do if we were 20, but what can we do? What can I do for you?
And I think you'll be surprised at how many people are willing to accommodate you as equally as you would be willing to accommodate somebody else.
Hopefully that's the case. Yeah. Everyone just be kind to everybody else. And we're all in this big boat together. So all of you guys out there, please leave us a comment and tell us about your thoughts on sex and aging and what kind of obstacles are you hitting? What are you finding out there? We want to know it all. So please let us know. And as Michael said earlier, please click like and subscribe so that we know that this is the kind of content that you're looking for. And for those of you that are listening to our podcast, wherever it is you're listening to, give us an amazing review. Give us those 5 stars, because not only does that boost our own show, but it also gets our show out there to more and more of those gay guys over 50 so that they too can join our conversation. So big thanks in advance for doing that for us.
Yeah, thank you. And you guys can reach us on social media at the moniker No Two Gays About It, and that's the number 2, and that is across social media, including YouTube. And you could also hit us up at gmail.com, no two gays about it at gmail.com. We want to hear from you.
Awesome.
We also want to thank 2 of our sponsors over at Patreon who are at the executive producer role, and that is Ted Zalewski and Cesar Montero. Thank you so much for your support, guys, and your belief in us. We appreciate it greatly.
We totally do. Thank you so much. Well, okay, that's it for this week. That's it for our sex talk today. So for all of you guys out there, whether you are over 50, over 60, over 70, over 80, hopefully over 90, hopefully you're still enjoying a very full and exciting sex life, whatever that may be. Give yourself the grace. Give yourself the understanding and give that to the other guys as well. So until next time, Michael.
Until next time, Tom. Hey, guys, thank you for listening.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again for watching our video. Don't forget to subscribe and watch some of our other videos.